Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Backyard Tabletop. My name is Jacob.
And my name's Kurtis.
Yeah, we're just jumping right into it today. That
Hopping
was
in.
smooth. That was smooth, Curtis. Best one yet.
We're hopping in and we're smooth like a frog.
Like the frog in the hag swamp in Baldur's Gate. Did you find the frog in Baldur's Gate?
God. That tortured creature.
Yeah, but you can save the frog. It's great. Anyway, hello, welcome back. We are the Backyard Tabletop. Kurtis and I are best friends, and we really enjoy the game of Dungeons and Dragons, and we like to sit down and chat about it. And we have started kind of a little journey of a review of the wonderful adventure known as Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. Obelisk?
Obelisk.
Obelisk. There's an I in there.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't want to get on that bandwagon if it's not Phandelver or Phandalin. It's what was the other pronunciation of Phandelvin?
It's people will say, instead of saying Phandalin, they'll say Phandelin.
Phandelin. That was maybe like a UK version.
And I think that's because it's Phandelver. Phandelver is the story name, not Phandelver.
Right.
And so people say Phandelver, Phandelin.
Right.
But it's not. It's Phandalin.
It's Phandalin.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it's either way.
Yeah, you do you at your table. Well, we reviewed Chapter 1. If you had missed that episode, if you're on YouTube, I'll probably put a link up right now. I'm getting all fancy on YouTube now, so you can
Links.
A little annotation link will pop up for Chapter 1. You're welcome to go back and watch that one and then come back and watch Chapter 2, because that's what we will be going through today. Starting out, though, Kurtis, like mentioned last time, managed to grab a 5 players, and he has started running this game. So I'm going to turn it over to him to kind of be like, hey, how did your first session go? Because you had a session 0.
Yeah.
And you started, and if I remember correctly, you wanted to kind of start with a little bit of role play on the travel. So how did that go, Kurtis?
Yeah, so basically a couple weeks ago now, we had our actual official first session. We had a session 0 a while before that to kind of get everybody acquainted with each other and make sure everybody's characters were good and party composition was good and everybody was happy. And we rolled stats and everything. But yeah, so we had our first session. It went really well, all things considered. I ended up being a little sick that morning, so we started an hour late, but we still had a great session. I just kind of curled up in my chair and didn't turn my camera on and DM'd like this for the first hour. No big deal.
You pushed through. Wow, my dude. Wow.
But it was good. No, it was really, really good. And it ended up being fine because honestly, the whole first hour was just them chatting in character anyway. It was great.
That might be the benefit of like online play sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I can just curl up and be fine. It went really well. Basically, the way I kind of started it out was I started with the intro, obviously, of some of you are getting out of Neverwinter for various reasons, kind of laying the groundwork a little bit for the background of some of the characters, why they're leaving, what's going on in Neverwinter to make them leave, things like that. And then basically I started with them kind of all approaching Barthen's wagon that he's having them deliver. So,
gotcha. So it was like at Neverwinter.
Yeah, basically on the outskirts of the city. The wagon had been prepared for them and was waiting for them. One of the characters was specifically had actually physically met with Barthen and had known Barthen for a little while, and so they were kind of the first one there, and they were entrusted with making sure it was ready to go, and then everyone else would just kind of be with them to escort it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of one by one, the characters approached the wagon, kind of an uneasy introductions kind of started, and everybody got to kind of say like, oh, okay, cool, it's you, great, that's fun. And then they got on the road, and I basically did just 2 days of simplified travel, just to kind of give them some time to, because you're on the road with somebody for 2 full days, you're spending 2 nights at camp with somebody, you're gonna talk. So I just gave them some time to be like, okay, does anyone have anything to say? Any introductions you want to do? Any thoughts you want to share? Anything your character's doing? And it went really, really well. It was like the whole first day of travel, nobody really did much. But then that like first campsite that they made, the druid started talking to everybody and asking them questions about like whether they've been in nature before, been to Phandalin before, do they like this tree, all that kind of stuff. That's Steve, by the way.
Oh my gosh!
You know Steve.
Steve
he's a great insider. He incites conversation very well as
very
as a
well,
character.
and he does a great job, and also like doing it in how like his character would do it, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
If he's a cleric, it would be all about his god. Have you ever heard of my god before? This is a little bit about my god. And this one, apparently, he's playing a druid, so
he's playing
so nature, right?
He's playing a young druid who is trying to build basically the first like Encyclopedia Britannica for the Sword Coast. But not because he wants to sell it or he wants anyone else to have it, just because he wants to do it.
That's amazing.
Because he's interested in it, and so he was having a good time. But yeah, so that he was a good icebreaker. He got other people talking and asking them questions, and then soon everybody was talking. And I feel like that's kind of always what it takes in a game: one player to just make that first leap of asking the other people a couple questions, and then stuff just kind of goes from there. And that's what I'm talking about. Like the whole first hour, I did introductions and interjected every once in a while to say like, okay, it's the end of the day. You guys are making a quick little camp. Anyone who want to do anything? And then I would just sit there for the next 20 minutes while they all talked. It was great.
Oh, that's so good.
So it was fantastic. So for a little bit of context, I think I talked about it a little bit last time, but we have our human druid, which is Steve. We have a wizard, which is Dip. We have
you got our dungeon master in on this game, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Wow, why am I forgetting what some of the people are? We have an artificer, which is Katie. We have a sorcerer, which is Greg, and then we have
Greg's playing. Okay,
Greg's playing a sorcerer, and then we have a warlock, which is Joel. So very magic heavy.
Ooh.
We have a warlock, a sorcerer, a wizard, and an artificer, and a druid.
lots of fun charisma in there, and some high intelligence, and a druid that's wants to write a book. That's awesome.
Yeah. So super interesting party. Very fun so far. Yeah. So they kind of got all the way through the travel, and then got up to the goblin ambush. Also went really well. They kind of immediately were like, okay, well, we got to figure out what happened here. This is the guy that's supposed to pay us.
Okay. Did the druid cast speak with animals?
He sure did.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm so glad I got you ready for that, Kurtis.
Yeah, you sure did. And I did my best. James Baxter.
Oh, yeah.
For the horses. Well, first he did speak with animals with just the oxen that were pulling the cart and was talking to them the whole first day of travel. But so I can tell I'm going to need to be prepared to do animals with Steve's druid.
That's amazing.
Maybe even plants eventually.
There you go. I sure hope Baldur's Gate's prepared you for that.
Yeah.
It's going to be wonderful.
It was great.
And I don't know why I have this in my head of like you DMing and you're just like, okay, was there anything you say? And like the first like role play moment of this campaign is like speak with animals, and it's Stephen the Ox.
Honestly, pretty much. It was like everyone he had some real quick introductions before the travel started. And then that's pretty much it. It was like the whole, like immediately that first day, he started talking to Katie's character, who was the artificer, because she was driving the cart. She was the one who knew Barthen before. And then as soon as he was done with that, he was like, okay, cool. I can't speak with animals, and I'm going to talk to these oxen. I was like, great, man. That's great.
That's great. Okay.
So, yeah, basically it was like he talked to the horses. They kind of explored the area, did some investigating, and then luckily they noticed the goblins before they made their attack. So it wasn't a wasn't a slaughter round. Yeah, no surprise round. But I've got a lot of casters, Jake.
Yeah.
They pretty much all have under 10 hit points.
Yeah.
It was pretty intense. Pretty much any time anyone got hit, it was like,
oh god.
Nobody went down, thankfully, barely. The wizard had like 1 hit point left. The artificer had 3 hit points left, and the warlock had like 4 or 6 hit points left.
Okay.
By the end of the fight.
4 goblins. It's like glad no critical hits.
Yep.
No critical hits happened.
But yeah, so they got through the fight, and then one of the goblins, which I kind of always have an issue with this. It always bugs me when a book is like, when this goblin is the last one left, he'll try to flee. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, they're goblins, and the party has way more turns than them. If it gets down to 2 goblins, they're both going to be dead by the end of that round, right? Like,
True.
It's very rare that you actually get the moment of, oh no, this goblin's alone. He tries to run for it. Like, that never happens for me, especially with monsters that low in health.
True.
So as soon as they were both at like half health, he just started booking it, because I was like, there's no way that they're gonna survive another round of player attacks. So one of the goblins started trying to run up to the side path to get away from everybody. But something I did notice, there was a slight change in the map, I think. For the encounter, because there's an actual visible path on the encounter map. And I don't remember there being one in the old map.
I have it up, so let me take a look and go see.
Yeah.
It would have been Goblish Ambush?
Yeah, in the original Phandelver, I don't remember there being an actual side path over there that was visible. It would be like to the northeast of the map.
So I have Goblin Ambush open. The actually only map I see, at least this is D&D Beyond, is actually just the cave, the hideout.
Really?
So...
No, I know there was a map.
I know there was a map, but this is also like this might be the free version that D&D Beyond gets, so
okay.
I don't know.
Here, let me see.
But I know what you're talking about. Yeah, because I know we've used one.
Yeah, it doesn't have an actual map in the book. I know there is one though.
A little odd.
anyway, I don't remember there being a visible side path before. And maybe there wasn't a map. Maybe I just made one with a road. I don't know.
Or it's been done. I'm sure that might have just be out there.
But anyway, on this new map in the second book, there's a visible side path that you can see on the map. So it wasn't too hard for them to be like, well, what's that over there? And then they found a bunch of goblin footprints and drag marks, and we're like, okay, well, that's obviously where they took them.
Right.
However, this was where the first inter-party disagreement happened, where our sorcerer with a criminal background was like, I think we should go drop the stuff off first and then come back and look for him. Like, there's got to be other people in town that can take this stuff from us. Like, it makes more sense to go do that and then come back later. Pretty much everybody else was like, no, that's a terrible idea. And he was like, well, then I'll just take it to town and you guys can go find it. And everybody was like, that's also a terrible idea. We're not letting you leave with this whole thing of stuff, because none of them really trust each other yet, which makes sense.
Yeah. It's
So
like, go collect all the gold and they get to town. Who are you?
Basically, they all kind of were like, no, we really think we should go do this first. And he took a little bit of convincing and eventually went along with it. So they parked the wagon. They pulled the two horses over, parked them with the wagon, kept them safe, and then started heading down the path. And luckily, the wizard has really good survival, and rolled really good perception checks. So they didn't trigger either of the traps. Luckily, they were able to get around them. And then they got to the mouth of the cavern and started kind of peeking around a little bit, figuring out what was going on. They weren't being loud. They weren't arguing. So I had it ruled that as they came around to the front of the cavern, they caught the eye of the goblins that were around a little blind, and that was the first time they saw each other. So there's not going to be a surprise round there either. So, but that's where we called it, because that was right at our ending time. So
yeah, good role play and got some combat in there. I think that's a good first session.
So this weekend we'll start in basically them getting into Kragmaw Caverns.
Gotcha.
See where it goes.
Well,
it'll be fun.
Wonderful. We'll definitely be keeping up with as Kurtis goes about running this and seeing how things might change. I'm curious to see how the hideout goes, and just for little tidbits, are you planning on doing anything like what you've done before, leveling them up, or are you going to try and run this like by the book?
I'm probably going to keep it closer to the book here. Mostly just because I want to. I just want to see it. I just want to see it run.
I think that's
how the book
great.
is meant to run. If they get through this first fight at the entrance to the caverns and they're like almost dead, I might level them up. We'll see. Just because I'm like, okay, if you fight two goblins and a goblin boss and you're all almost dead, then just because they're so squishy,
well,
they're all casters.
They're very squishy. Yeah, and the other thing I think of is as a DM, like level 1, sure, it is scarier because sometimes like a critical hit could mean pretty like potential instant death depending on what you're getting hit with. But I'm also kind of like, I don't really it's like you have an encounter and basically you need to retreat to go take a short rest and then come back, or even retreat to go take a long rest and come back. And for me, sometimes I'm kind of like, sometimes it kind of pulls away from game time. Like I understand that's like these are what our characters would do. We have to feel it, but I'm also kind of like, I kind of want a little bit of, we're all people here trying to experience a game. If you have to keep retreating to go take a rest and come back, it's one of those things that sometimes I think about.
Yeah, and
teach their own.
Luckily the druid's already kind of on top of it. He's got Goodberry that he prepared the night before, so he was able to get pretty much everyone back up to full health after the initial goblin fight. Just because
that's an interesting point.
It's Goodberry, and they all have less than 10 hit points, so it's not that hard to heal people with Goodberry.
We're back up.
Yeah.
Oh, very fun.
And so, he could probably recast that again at least one more time before they have to rest. So not the end of the world.
All right.
There's options for them, so it's good.
Very cool. Well, that sounds like a pretty cool little adventure, and we'll definitely be keeping you guys updated. I think it's also kind of fun that you're running it more by the book, so that way you can give us your review on, like, was this too hard of a combat? Was this just right, et cetera, et cetera. Also, sometimes a combat can just be so dictated on how the party and you are rolling. So
I also feel like I have a good mix of players. Two of my players are quite good at making strong characters. And then the other three are, very experienced players, but don't tend to be more of the power gamer. They're more average kind of players. Gotcha. And so I think it'll be so my party should be kind of slightly above average as far as expectation of damage and ability. So we'll see how it goes from there.
Cool.
If it's already, if even with that, it's like they're all dying immediately, then I think there's some issues there, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Kurtis. Let us know if you guys are happening to run this game. We'd love to hear about your stories happening to go in this game. Even if you maybe run Lost Mines and have run the Hideout, what are some fun tidbits from your stories? But we're going to be jumping into chapter 2 now.
Yes.
Of
if you're in my game, stop listening. Go away.
Yeah, we had to do a little snippet at the beginning, so at least they can get a little bit of listening in.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert for chapter 2. So the title's chapter of this one is Trouble in Phandevler. And so it's kind of chapter 2 starts out with, just a little brief history on the town. This is a frontier town. It was built on top of ruins of a much older settlement. Hundreds of years ago, Old Phandevler was a thriving town whose people were firmly allied with dwarves and gnomes of the Phandelver Pact. However, there were some bandits came in, ransacked the town that were from the mines of Wave Cave. That also, basically, the bandits of attacked Wave Cave and also the town. And Phandevler was abandoned for centuries. And then in the past 3 to 4 years, hardy folk have been making their way from Neverwinter and Waterdeep and are beginning to settle on top of the ruins. It is a bristling town, and there are farmers, woodcutters, fur traders, prospectors, drawn by the stories of gold and platinum in the foothills of the Sword Mountains. And because it is so new, unfortunately, there are some ruffians and bandits that have settled here as well, taking advantage of the fact that the area has no local authority, and no one has chased them off. So that is kind of a little bit about the town, and there's also a little bit there. Apparently, this gang is also run by a mysterious figure known as Glassstaff.
Yes. So I do kind of notice a slight difference in the story there, at least from what I remember. For some reason, I remember in the original Phandevler that the town had been continuously sacked by orcs.
Correct.
Raiding from the hills. And that now it's switched over to bandits, just general bandits. Yeah.
Correct. And it explains it a little bit more in this chapter. But that was the first note, because for those of you that don't know, I'm kind of going through Lost Mines as well and just happening to note little differences here and there. And that's the first one, is that it used to be an orc tribe.
Yeah.
And it was, I believe, in Lost Mines, it actually was it's an orc tribe that was also the same orc tribe apparently that attacked it centuries ago, but it's kind of like been keeping on, and it's
Right.
like they've settled nearby and things like that.
Yeah, and they like every time it rebuilds, they go sack it again, basically. Yeah.
Basically, so they kind of keep it at bay. Later on, it talks about, because there was a quest in Lost Mines that is given to you by the town master, who basically wants you to go chase off and attack the orcs that are settled nearby to stop them from ransacking the town. Now it's an ogre and a bunch of bugbears
Huh.
are kind of what is labeled as that one. So that's the
Interesting.
little bit later with a bunch of quests.
Also, yeah, it does say the same bandits who sacked the mines also attacked the settlement, but I don't think that's the red brands. It's not the same bandits, I don't think.
No,
No.
it is different. Yeah.
Different group.
Which I think that's probably why back in Lost Mines, that's probably why they made it like it's an orc tribe rather than bandits. So it also helps like the players
difference.
probably keep them separate. But yeah, like in this one, it kind of labels them more as marauders.
Yeah.
Than an actual tribe type of thing, which is interesting. Just little differences here and there. And it kind of goes into the classic, intro of the town and running this chapter, and little snippets of how to run it. And I got to admit, Kurtis, from me personally, usually chapters like this is why I have a hard time running book adventures.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's one of those things that like it's kind of a long chapter, not necessarily. There's a lot, like it's not necessarily long because there's so much to do. It's like it's introing the town, so it's usually things like this. It's like, oh gosh, I have 9 NPCs to keep track of, and there's also there's a hideout over here I have to keep in mind, and the NPC that they got to go to over here at Barthen's Goods, and then also over here. And I know for me, it's usually like so overwhelming, but when you actually get into the play of the game, which I'm sure we'll get there, it's not like that.
No, yeah.
For those of you that may even kind of be on that fence of like, oh gosh, maybe I misremember something. It's one of those things that like there's a lot of information here, and it's always recommended to go through it and kind of pick and glean. But it was kind of nice at the beginning. It shows like the top 3 things. They have the Barthen's Good if you're running the the adventure hook of that one of Meet Me in Phandalin. It has that right up front, and then it has also the Lion Shield Coster, which is kind of like those were the goods that you found in the hideout. If you have those kind of right up front, and it also has the inn because like that's probably
somewhere to stay
where you got to go to sleep and stuff. So I kind of appreciate little stuff like that from a little tidbit of mine, because I always get a little overwhelmed. It's like, wow, this is just so much information. But when you actually get into playing stuff like this, it's really not that bad. I don't know. Is it kind of the same for you?
Yeah. I think the thing that is the most like taxing for me in chapters like this is just keeping players on task, honestly.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
You get to a new town and you're like, oh, I want to go shopping, I want to go see what this is, I want to go meet everybody, I want to check out the town, and it's like, okay, but also remember there's still somebody missing who's been kidnapped and you got to find him. Remember that.
Right.
So
yeah,
and I think it can be very easy for players to get here and be like, wow, okay, quest done. Good job, guys. I guess we just live our lives now? Like, you know what I mean?
It's like, so I came here for this reason. Can I get a job here? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like one of the players has plans on opening a shop in Phandalin someday. So it's like, okay, well, luckily they're the one who has the ties to Barthen, so they're the least likely to like abandon him and just make a shop.
Abandon.
No, shouldn't be any issues there. But yeah, I think it's interesting because it's like there's so much going on with like the red brands in town
Mm-hmm.
that can be pretty distracting from like going and finding
The other things.
Cragmaw Castle and finding Barthen.
Right. Right. Because the chapter's laid out pretty good. Is like it kind of shows you the first things of like, hey, when they're here, this is probably what they'll be looking for. And then there's kind of like finding Cragmar's castle right up there. And then there's the strange goblins little thread hook if they happen to be learning about that. And then that goes right into important NPCs. Yeah, so I know what you mean. And I when you start looking at all the NPCs in this chapter, it's interesting how they all have a quest.
Yes.
Right? There's a little label of there's 9 total NPCs here, and at the end of each little description, it's like they have a quest for the party, which is it's like so is also like remembering that as a game master to do that. But usually all of them, every NPC you talk to, the party goes up and talk to right when you get in, it's like the red brands are making life difficult right now. You go up to another one. The red brands are making life difficult right now. It's like, so there's definitely a big emphasis on like the first thing you probably want to do in town as the party is like take care of the red brands. And that seems to be kind of the focus of this chapter is introducing introducing Phandalin, but then also talking about there's a problem.
Yeah, it's almost like they need help from some of the townsfolk to, find Barthen and discover some more information to get to Cragmaw, but before they can, get in good with the town and get that information, they need to help the town out first a little bit, it seems like, because if this is where they plan on staying and this is the place they've come to be, they recognize there's a problem here and maybe it needs fixing before they can move on, kind of a thing. Which, exactly. I do feel like the book does leave it pretty open. Like if they want to ignore the red brands first and go to Cragmaw first, they can. They can try if they want to try and find it, if they've gotten enough information. But it can be pretty difficult to get that information. Because so far as I understand it, from what I remember and from briefly reading this over, a lot of the information about Cragmaw comes from them getting into the Red Brand hideout.
Yeah, so there's also like there's kind of almost different ways, when I was kind of going through this, it's like, if they go and talk to what's his name? I want to say Slander. His name is not Slander. You rescued him.
Sildar.
Sildar. That's his name. I was like, his name's not
Sildar Hallwinter.
Yes. Like he has his own little thing that he goes and does. He goes and stays at the inn, and he's also here on a little quest, and so he can give you information. You can go talk to there's a halfling farmer that who has the son Carp. Carp actually knows something about the Red Brand's hideout. And even in hideout, you can learn some stuff. And then also you can also just kind of go get information about the castle, which is the halfling farmer is friends with a druid who can tell you information. So it's kind of like almost as like how you kind of go what your party does.
Yeah. There's a couple things in here that definitely do feel a little bit distracting. And it can definitely feel, I think, like the characters get here and now suddenly they're being pulled in a few different directions. It's like, I feel like you did a lot of work. If you ran it by the book, you've done a lot of work to get these people connected to Gundren so that they want to help him and see this through. And then they get to town, and now it's like they're being pulled away from Gundren, whereas some characters might be like, no, we can't do any of this yet. Gundren is still out there, and we need to find him. Like, that's how I pretty much every time envision things happening is like, if you've created a character with a background where you're connected to Gundren, and you are his friend, and then you get to town, and now suddenly there's bandits and people asking you to do a 2-day trek north of town to check out a well, and
Yeah.
and all this other stuff. It's like, no, I can't do any of that. My friend is missing and I still need to find him, kind
Yeah.
of a thing, you know?
Right, right. And I think as a game master, there's a little bit of that goes into this. I think the book doesn't really give you like, here are the rails, make sure you do this quest first and then
Yeah,
this
yeah.
quest and then this quest. The book does a good job at like, hey, here's all the stuff that you can give your party to do, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think as a game master, you have to come in kind of knowing that. And I think that's why sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed because it's like, whoa. But I think that's kind of the idea. So it's like, as a game master, you probably have in mind, like, hey, there's the red brands is an issue. Pretty much every NPC you talk to mentions that. And then also Cragmar Castle. So you can kind of like use those two. It's like in my head as a game master approaching it, it's like, those are the two quests I'm going to give the party. And then they can choose, do they do one or the other? Do they, et cetera, et cetera. And if they don't want to do that yet, maybe they're role playing as timid creatures, timid characters. You can maybe throw another quest out there or something like that. Because like just for the sake of like talking about this chapter, it goes into like, here are the important NPCs. And then at the like inn, it kind of starts you off at the inn, and there's like a ton of rumors that you can pick up from people that are just happened at the inn. It also goes into Barthen's provisions, and it kind of lists each places out.
Yeah, so something I am recognizing now is that in my first run of this, of Phandelver back in the day, I almost completely ignored the groups that people were a part of. Like there's a person in town who's a member of the Zehenterim. There's a person in town who's a member of the Harpers. There's a person in town who's a member of the Lord's Alliance. Like, I completely ignored any of that in my original run because that's all lore stuff that I didn't know yet. And it was like, okay, well, I don't know anything to do with that, and it's not pertinent to the story, it doesn't seem, so I'll just ignore it, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, and it does say it in here. It's like when you get to that, it's like they has a little snippet of like joining the Order of the Gauntlet, which is one of the things that you can join. And it's kind of like just like it has a little note like, hey, this is a note that's like, hey, this has nothing to do with the story. It's kind of like role play. And also if you haven't it says players who play in organized events can like have like their character be a part of these organizations. I don't know too much about that. I believe that's probably Adventure League type things, which is kind of fun. But as a game master, I was gonna say that's probably like my favorite thing. I was like, oh, that would be so fun to just have a little side story if players do want to join these orders later on. I don't know. I definitely see how this book goes, but like if later on in this story it starts getting into where you have to save Phandelver because these strange goblins are kind of appearing, well, that might be really cool information that the Harpers may want to know about, and maybe you can start role playing like a couple Harpers come and join or something like that. I don't know, that helps more, maybe less helps the party, keeping them the focus, but they come in and start helping the town or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the reason
I love that. Yeah,
I think the reason I kind of ignored it before was it almost felt like a distraction of being if my player joins this group, suddenly they're going to be like, okay, who's my contact? What am I doing with this group? This is going to be fun. And it's like, okay, great, you're a part of this group now. Completely ignore that for the rest of the campaign. Like, because really, it doesn't actually come back in at all, other than now you have a contact who can help you.
Right.
But if you're good friends with them anyway, then that's just as good,
Right.
Like it doesn't necessarily say anything about they gain extra resources or anything like that. Like it just says they give them this title and they give them a pin and then it literally says, at least in the Zehenterim one, it literally says this may not matter much in this campaign, but it could matter a lot for the character in future endeavors, kind of a thing. Like,
right.
Like, being a part of the Zahentrim isn't going to do anything for you all the way up to level 12. Like,
right.
It's not until you're done with this campaign and move on to other things that you might be able to use that.
Right.
Which is why I've kind of ignored it before. So
yeah, no, 100%. And I think it is one of those things that, like, it can be, like you said, very much distracting. And I think as a game master, sometimes you don't want to give the players something that in the game doesn't mean anything, because I think that kind of feels bad. So if you do want to use that, I would probably encourage the game master to, like, hey, maybe add something, but not right away, but like later down the line, it might be kind of fun that they happen to get a note when they wake up, and it's a new quest that you as a game master homebrewed or something like that.
And the thing is, I'm not like upset that they included it. It's fine that they included it, because for some people and for some players, they're going to go on to do, like it says, organized play. They might be doing this campaign at an organized play event, and joining the Harpers is huge for that character in the future, because that's where they get all their future quests from when they're going to other organized play events and stuff. Like, that's a big deal. But and then also if you're playing a group that once you finish this 8-chapter campaign, you're going to move on to other campaigns, having those connections to Harpers and stuff like that could be very interesting and useful.
Yeah.
But if all you're doing is playing,
a very good point.
If all you're doing is playing Phandelver and Below, it's almost completely useless. It means pretty much nothing, basically.
Right.
Other than flavor and fun, which is good and useful, but could be distracting.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally get it. So do I take it that for your game that you're going to be doing, you're probably going to be leaving these out again? Or do you feel like
I'm not going to leave them out completely. I just don't necessarily think that I'll, like, invite the players to join necessarily. I'll probably still, give hints that they might be a part of certain organizations and stuff. And, the lady, Sister Gariel, she might tell them she's with the Harpers in order to get them to help her and stuff like that, because the Harpers are a well-known organization. But I doubt, I don't really think I'm gonna, like, invite any of the players to join any of these factions necessarily.
Yeah, I get you. That's probably a good way of doing it, because then at that point you're almost pushing into this is going to be important. Part of their backstory.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's like it's part of their backstory. So if they happen to do any snooping or anything like that, like, that might be kind of fun. Like the person that's part of the crime organization, maybe they want to set them up for blackmail or something.
That's the thing.
I don't know if they happen to find that out.
If one of the players, like, expresses interest and is like, "Oh man, the Harpers! I love the Harpers. Like, I would love to help you guys. Can I join your organization?" Then we'll figure it out. But I think basically, unless that happens and they express interest, unless it just really makes sense, like I do have a criminal character with a criminal background, they might strike a nerve with what's her name, Halia, who's in the Zahentrim.
She's the she owns the Lion Shield Coister, right?
No, she owns the Miners Exchange. The Miners Exchange.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And so, like, if this character strikes a nerve with her and they get along well, maybe she'll offer him some opportunities in the future, because he is a criminal and this could work out. So, it is what it is, but I don't think I'll put very much emphasis on those things.
Yeah, no, totally, and I totally get that, and probably the majority of people playing this probably won't as well unless they want to have a little fun or some role play. Yeah, because if also a character is like comes to them as like has watched the D&D movie and like wants to be a part of the Harpers, maybe it's part of their backstory. Yeah, and they can make a friend. because of that. So for the sake of the podcast, we're not going to go through every individual place. There's highlighted places.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is like every place here is listed out, and there's people that owns it. They have a little backstory. There's a couple NPCs that I noticed were different from Lost Mines. I mean, Barthen is now a young woman, whereas in Lost Mines it was a 50-year-old man. It's a little different there.
Seems that's one of the strangest changes to me, because it's like,
it's very different.
Maybe it's a little overplayed. The old aging guy who owns the local provision store,
the special goods store.
Like that's I get it. That can be a little old, but this is a classic adventure for a reason. Like it should feel. I feel like this adventure should feel a little bit cliche. If it's just me, like it. That's what it is. It's the quintessential D&D adventure. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to get you into the game. And so I don't have a problem with it. It just seems weird that they made that decision.
Yeah. I think I would definitely agree. It's just like I was just reading it. I was like, mainly because we've played Lost Mines and we've played Icefire Peak, which both take place in this town, and both times Barthen was a 50-year-old man. And so I remember reading this, and I was kind of like, wait, did I miss something?
Yeah.
Did Kurtis change
for a second,
this?
I was
did I just experience like a different alternate timeline? And I was just
for a second, I was like, did I misread it when I did did I just, because there were a couple things when I ran it originally that I just kind of read over it so quickly because I hadn't quite prepared it, but you guys were already there. And so I just read over it so quickly and went, oh, okay. And just kind of like went off the top of my head with it from what I read. And I was like, did I just read Barthen's provisions and just assume it was a 50-year-old aging man and went with it? I was like, no, it was. It was a middle-aged man running his provision shop. And now instead it's a young woman.
Yeah, it made me laugh, and I was kind of like, wait, I just had super whiplash, and like the Berenstain Bears, the Berenstein Bears. It's like one of those alternate weird timelines. Anyway, that was something I noticed. This one's also kind of fun. Darin, his last name is Edermath. Darin Edermath. In
the orchard
Lost
guy.
Mines, he owns the orchard here. In Lost Mines, it was a half elf. But in this one, he is a drow.
Oh, very interesting.
So that's
cool.
that was kind of fun. There's a little bit more. That's kind of interesting because it's like originally it was a half elf adventurer. Like he used to be an adventurer, and he's well over 100 years old. But in this one, it's a drow, and it talked about him being over 500 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun. Maybe role play if you kind of want to role play a little bit, like because he was from this area. That's why he came here to retire.
Yeah.
And so you could role play a little bit that he, used to be part of the ancient town or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's kind of fun. I don't know.
Yeah, he was around when the old one was sacked. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only one, everyone else is the same. The only one that's also different a little bit is Harbin Wester.
Yes.
Who is the townsmaster. He is the same gender and everything, but in Lost Mines it described him as a fat, pompous old fool.
Yes.
In this one, he is actually well liked and kind-hearted banker man here in the town.
Yeah.
Which actually kind of makes a little bit more sense,
but timid.
Yeah. But he's timid, and so that's why he's being bullied more by the Red Brands, which actually kind of makes a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah,
because it talks about Phandalin they elect their townsmaster once a year.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense, like because you have to kind of be well liked, and so it's weird that he's an old fool and
the way
pompous and things. But
the way that I had kind of ruled that before was that because he was also a banker in the last one, and he was good with numbers, good with papers, and he was a judge. Like he would do the judging in the town and stuff.
Right.
So the way I did it before was like, yeah, he's kind of a jerk and he's pompous, but everyone knows he's good at what he does. Like, he's a good banker.
That makes sense.
He's good with money.
Sense, yeah.
He's good at running the town. So, you know, he sucks and we have to put up with him, but he keeps the town afloat.
But it's
so
like he does math better than me.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That makes sense.
That's kind of how I did it before.
That makes sense.
I kind of viewed it almost more like the master of Lake Town in The Hobbit kind of a thing. Like,
yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it. Yeah.
Like he's pompous and self-righteous, but honestly does a pretty okay job at running things. So
yeah,
everyone puts up with it.
Yeah. So that was NPCs, really only different from Lost Mines to this adventure. And then just kind of to wrap up the chapter, the book kind of, or just kind of bring it to, a close here. The chapter, like this chapter does kind of push the players a little bit into kind of dealing with the red brands. Cause it's kind of like you get to town, the red brands is a problem. So here's kind of like, if you can deal with them, and there's basically, you can go to the Sleeping Giant, which is a tap house on the outside of town, and have an encounter there where you kind of confront the red brands. And then also they have a hideout here, which is the manor.
Yeah. Tressendar Manor.
Yes, thank you.
Tressendar.
Tressendar, yeah. And so there's a couple ways that the players can learn about all this through interactions with the NPCs. But ultimately, they kind of will run into the red brands, have a little interaction, and then if they want, they could go to the hideout, or they could, like you said, go off to find the castle if they so desire. But that is in chapter 3.
Yeah.
So kind of up to what the players do, but kind of that. And this is kind of like a pretty fun little, like, this is a traditional dungeon, I guess you could say. The first one was a cave, even though it was a dungeon. And this is kind of an actual dungeon, because beneath the manor itself is the hideout. And so that's where you can kind of go in and explore. And like before, I think it's always kind of fun that there's different ways that the players could get in here. They could kind of, and go into the manor itself and then make their way down, or they can, if they go talk to Carp, which is a young halfling lad. We all love Carp. He talks about a hidden entrance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things is that there's a few ways that they can get around to figuring this out. If they really stick to Sildar and they really like him, then he can be kind of their post for kind of the whole campaign. Honestly, Sildar does a lot of helping guide the characters if they stick with him, at least the whole first half.
He also is a great source of quests, because he also offers a lot of gold. Like like he asks for help to try and find, the reason why he's here is to try and find a friend of his that's a wizard. And he offers I think
it's 200.
Or the castle, if they go investigate the castle to try and get Gundren back, I think it was 500 gold pieces he offers them.
Yeah, I think if
he becomes quite a quest giver.
Because you find out that the guy he's looking for is Glassstaff, who's the guy who runs the red brands, but he doesn't know that. He thinks that he went missing when trying to stop the red brands. But it turns out he just installed himself as their leader. So if you find that out and bring Glassstaff back, basically he offers them 200 gold to let him take Iarno back, because he's supposed to be a member of the Lord's Alliance as well. So if you let him take Iarno back to find justice, he'll give you 200 gold for what you've done. But you also have another offer from someone else in town who wants the person to see justice in town, who's offering you gold to do that as well. So the players get kind of a choice there. That's fun.
And I think that's the lady that is the criminal, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, where she's after him. So kind of a fun little dilemma as well, where like Sildar's kind of like the heroic, maybe traditional one, but if the players want to be a little bit more shady, they can go and help a criminal organization
Well,
instead, and she
because
could maybe become a quest giver. Like,
because her actual reasons for wanting them to capture the leader, so she can then, because she's like the only other person in town that the Red Brands don't mess with. So she's actually looking to usurp Glassstaff and take control of the Red Brands herself.
exactly.
So that's another fun thing, but that's not necessarily apparent at first. She just seems like she's a shrewd businesswoman and wants this dude to go to jail in town for what he's done to the town.
Right.
And so if the players take the side of, no, he's messed up this town, he needs to seek justice here, then she might end up, getting what she wants. So.
Mm-hmm. And lots of like really cool magic items and treasure that the party can be found in this place, which was, I was just kind of going through this and just looking at the treasure, and it was just some like really cool, like, wow, like the treasure in like Glassstaff's quarters in this dungeon. You can find a scroll of hold person and fireball. Always kind of fun right off the bat. There's potions of invisibility that they can find. There's potions of growth, which is like an enlarge one. And there was the other one was a +1 sword. That was it. There's a +1 longsword they can find in here that is Talon. And that was used to be an adventurer's longsword. And it was someone that's actually from centuries ago when the bandits first came to ransack the town. And so there's a fun little history check and some lore there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all in all, kind of a very nice little chapter. I think they do a great job in kind of like we were talking about, keeping everything like not necessarily putting everything on rails, but there is an emphasis on, hey, probably want to do the Red Brand hideout first. To just kind of maybe like help the townsfolk, like kind of become a little bit of a hero here to the townsfolk.
There's a lot pointing you there, and you might even find more answers there. Yeah,
exactly, because that is where we learned about the continuation of the story, that the Red Brands are working for a villain known as the Spider.
Yes.
And you can learn stuff like that from some bugbears and things like that. So, and there's obviously kind of like, the little what's next portion of like with Glassstaff taking into custody. It's like you've kind of made a little name for yourself. It's like, hey, we might have some adventurers here, and that kind of gets you some benefit of the town, and the town's masters will be very grateful for you kind of taking care of that. And kind of overall, it's kind of fun. It's like another thing I think why they made the townsmaster a little bit more cheerful is there is an emphasis on, because of the later chapters, of the party kind of like caring about this town, because later on there's going to be an emphasis on trying to save the town. So a lot of the NPCs, it talks about like role playing them is like, try to role play like the townsfolk as being really curious about the adventurers and maybe wanting to get to know them, and they're warm and cheerful because they're kind of accepting people to come and join the town. So that's kind of fun from a perspective of like, that wasn't really the case in Lost Mines.
Yeah.
Also, Lost Mines had a lot of like ideas. Like, it was also a little bit more centered on like, you're a new dungeon master, so here's some tips on how to role play NPCs and such.
Yeah.
So this time it's almost like they're emphasizing like, hey, let's try and get the party to really kind of take ownership of this town, almost in a way of protecting them,
Yeah, they can be the heroes of Phandalin. They're not just random guys passing through. They can care about the town and want to be here, and because of that, they kind of, like you said, almost take a little bit of ownership, take it under their wing, kind of a thing, and help protect it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
is something that I really loved from the Dragon of Icespire Peak game, adventures, because you get that other town, and I can't remember what the name of it is for the life of me, but it's almost like a Phandalin situation, but the town is like completely a wreck. And so
Yeah.
your characters, like through the chapters, are helping rebuild it.
Yeah.
And eventually
Yeah, I do remember that.
they get
Yeah.
like their own land there. They can create their own tavern. Like that was something I loved about that adventure.
That was something we were excited about.
Yeah.
We
So
I remember when we did that. We were really excited about a tavern.
yeah. So
Yeah. So that's kind of cool that they emphasize stuff like that, and also very interesting. I don't know why, but when I remember when we were playing these adventures, I don't know why it never really occurred to me that like, oh, we can take these villains into custody and they can go stand trials for these things.
Yeah. I think you guys did capture Glass
kind of fun.
alive, if I'm not mistaken.
I personally don't remember,
because I think some people asked you to. A couple of people had asked you to. I think you guys did end up taking.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, because I was playing a monk, and so I think I was all for that. But we had a character in it, which was he redid the class, but he was he took on he used to be a red brand, but he got exiled or something like that. So he wanted revenge, if I remember correctly, and he was out for blood when it came to Glassstaff.
Yep.
But yeah. So I mean, like, there's kind of a lot to figure out, and ultimately at this point, with that taken forward, like at the end of this chapter, the players should kind of know that they need to find Wave Echo Cave, because they've learned a lot about Wave Echo Cave actually in the hideout, and they need to go to the castle, and go learn a little bit more about Phandalin, and also I think they learn more about the spider there, and potentially hopefully get Gundren back and see if they can start making their way to Wave Echo Cave. So it's kind of like, it's like, okay, so we got some cool things. It's like, that's kind of the overall path. Like, go to castle, and we need to go to Wave Echo Cave, and then there's also some fun little quests if the players want to go do.
And the major thing I think here is that they start recognizing that things are connected. That the red brands were being run by the same people the goblins are being run by. And they were getting help from each other, and so they're seeing that this is bigger than a bunch of little random stuff happening. It's bigger than just a goblin tribe and some ruffians and this guy over here and this guy over here. It's all kind of connected and weaving together for some bigger purpose.
Right.
And it's kind of like starting the trail that will eventually lead them to the latter half of the book, which is huge. Yeah. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Exactly. And especially in this, it's like a little sprinkled at the beginning of like, if the players do happen to learn about these strange goblins and they try and like start asking townsfolk about it, like the townsfolk have heard of them as well. So it still kind of is alluding to potentially some more. It's kind of like they're like kind of on the outskirts, like you were talking about with the cave, is they kind of, these weird goblins show up to kind of just test their abilities and then leave.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the townsfolk have seen and heard stuff like that. So
yeah,
kind of fun. We'll get into a little bit more about that in the later chapters. But overall, pretty good. Are you excited, like, when they finally get to town, Kurtis?
I'm so excited for Phandalin. It's one of my favorite towns. I love all of the NPCs there. They're really cool. And the nice thing is it's still a small town. It's not like you're running a whole city of Neverwinter. So like it's easy for them to get around. It's easy for them to know where to go. Everybody's friendly. Well, not everybody's friendly, but everybody's wanting to meet them, and there's plenty for them to do, and it's just really fun. It gives you big, like, local town hero vibes, which is great. I love that.
Really, really fun. Just a start of a little adventure. I think it really is great to kind of start on these outskirts and then making your way into a town, and them being new to a town. It gets a little overwhelming when you're looking at the adventure, but when you're actually playing it, it's really fun to just kind of see what the players want to do, right? And then just role playing the NPCs around. If they go and pray at the shrine, you can add some fun little role play to the elf that's going on, and they can learn a little bit there. It's really cool. That's when it starts getting really immersive, I feel like.
Yeah.
Is that this town is living and breathing. All these characters have things going on. Like one of the side quests is you learn that the lady that's taking care of the shrine left a few days ago, and she came back wounded, right? So she had a little thing, and so the players could help. And then you learn about this family that's going on, that the Red Brands had was bullying the family, and they wound up killing the husband, and the wife and son got captured, and things like that. So it's things are happening in this town, and that's when it starts getting really immersive to take those moments and I don't know, hone in on those little moments and see how the players react.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's something you can't account for in an adventure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, anything you're going to homebrew and throw in to kind of wrap this up, Kurtis? Are you going to pretty much keep this to the book?
I really want to keep it to the book.
Or maybe I should ask this. Which of the NPCs are you most looking forward to role-playing? Because I know off the top of my head, I loved your Carp.
Carp was great, and Carp was a lot of fun, and especially for you, ended up being a big character even in the next,
it was so
even in
fun.
Icespire Peak.
Yeah,
because Icespire Peak takes place right after, and then you're still in Phandalin for the beginning of that. So it was you saw Carp again, and you saw the effect that your previous character had on Carp as a small child, and so that was a lot of fun. I think somebody that I'm looking a little more forward to kind of role playing and getting a little more into their motives and stuff is actually going to be Halia. As a Henterin person, because last time I just kind of played her as being a shrewd businesswoman, and she wanted what she wanted for the betterment of the town. But I'm looking forward to getting a little more into the actual motives, and her having some more self-interest at heart, and maybe even taking over the Red Brands, depending on what the players do. I'll actually follow through with that kind of stuff. So we'll see. I think that'll be fun.
That's a really cool. Do you think you might add a little bit more in, since one of your characters has a criminal background?
Yeah, I think
maybe
so.
Maybe she can recognize that or something. I don't know.
I think it'll help. I just can't wait to see where it goes. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, with that, thank you all so much for listening to our story time and us going through Chapter 2 of Phandelver and Below. Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. I keep there's Phandelver and then there's Phandalin, and I keep going back and forth.
Yep.
But we're going to keep going through these chapters, and thank you so much. Don't worry, we'll get back to our kind of regular scheduled programming here in a little bit, but we kind of want to just hone in on doing some reviews, kind of bringing some different variety to the podcast. So thank you for coming along on this adventure with us.
Yeah.
This backyard adventure.
This backyard tabletop adventure.
As always, I have been Jake.
I'm Kurtis.
What's the secret word for today, Kurtis?
The secret word for today is... Provisions.
Provisions. That's a great one. Secret word for today. Somehow put it down in the comments below. Provisions.
Yep. And if any of my players put it in the comments, I'm going to be upset.
Kurtis will know.
I'll know.
Kurtis will know. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all again. We'll see you next time on the Backyard Tabletop.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.